Hey, okay, do you want to hear about my sweatshirt now?
I do, because we got on the video and I was like, hey, I like that sweatshirt. And you're like, I'll tell you about it. And I was like, okay,
then
did
you
you just
kept
get it? And you're like,
asking.
I'll tell you about it in a minute. Once we click record.
I'm getting to it.
Just wait 5 more seconds.
We'll introduce ourselves.
This is 2 girls, 1 ghost.
2 girls, 1 ghost. And that is your ghostess, Corinne, and I'm your ghostess, Serena. I feel like I did that differently. But hey, yes, okay. This is from our listener, which I have one for you, Corinne. I was going to give it to you in person.
How? Did you meet someone?
Tell
me more
listeners,
details. How'd you get this?
I'm getting there.
I have access to the P.O. box. You don't have a key.
I side-swooped the P.O. box. I circumnavigated it. Our listener, whose Instagram I'm going to give a shout out to, it's called Living Luna Creations. She had messaged me and was talking about a couple of things and then was like, can I send you sweatshirts? She designs tattoos for Inkbox, which is the company that I...
Oh, yes. You had the bite me on the back of your elbow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she also designs tattoos for people. She's an incredible artist. And she does a lot of A Court of Thorns and Roses and like fantasy series type of artwork.
Also, shout out to that girl out there who got a Tamlin tattoo after reading just the first book and hasn't read any of the rest of the series.
That happened.
An interesting move, yeah. Everyone's like, ooh, maybe read the whole series before you get tatted.
Yeah,
Anywho.
That's an interesting choice. But anyway, Living Luna Creations, she sent us both a sweatshirt, this one, and on the back it says, can you read it?
The moon made me do it. Wait, I need that sweatshirt right now because my due date's like 5 days before the full moon, but I'm convinced the child's going to stay in me until the full moon. And then I just want to wear it as I like push the baby out. I'm like, the moon did it.
You're not going to want to
do this.
You will not want to be wearing this while giving birth.
I'm going to be fully nude and feral.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I mean, obviously super talented. Love the sweatshirt. Didn't know that I also got one and was already like, wait, where'd you get that?
I was going to wait to wear it because I knew you would be excited about it. And I wanted to have you open it in person. But then I was like, I love this sweatshirt. I've literally been wearing it since I got here. So
it's hard not to. When you like, I feel like you and I both get in the same rhythm where it's like, as soon as we have one item that we like, we just wear it nonstop.
Nonstop. Agreed. But Payne and I are in Marblehead now. We haven't moved into the house yet, but we are staying here until then.
Also, I feel like we're about to give people the most confusing timeline of events ever because we have been we say it every single episode, but we have been bulk recording episodes. We are also recording them out of order because it's
very out of order.
For example, we're recording this that comes out in a few months, but then tomorrow I'm recording one that is supposed to come out in a couple weeks. Like it's just all over the place. So it's going to be you being like, I'm in Marblehead. I already moved. And then it's going to be like, I'm about to move to Marblehead. It's going to be all over the place.
It's all over the place.
But if you want to give like an actual timeline of events with like months, maybe do it right now. It's April.
Okay. Right now it is April. Payne and I flew out here with Leia. I shipped my car. We're staying in Marblehead until we move into our house, which is in middle of May. But we did a lot of exploring this weekend. We're becoming locals. We were inducted into Maddie's with a Thunderdome, which is like a very, very dangerous drink. So I guess like early days of the bar opening, there was a bunch of sailors and there was like a woman who came in and wanted like a fruity drink. And you've been to Maddie's and they pour heavy, heavy drinks. So it's okay, imagine this glass. They put ice in it and then they pour vodka basically to the top of where my coffee is right now. They pour a little bit of champagne and then I think it's orange juice, cranberry juice, and grenadine or something like that. Or like a raspberry syrup. Yeah.
So just literally anything that they had in their bar that was sugary, they're like, let's just pour it in here.
On top of vodka and champagne. So dangerous.
Okay. Now I'm starting to understand because I've been to Maddie's, but I've never been to Maddie's in like a ratchet setting, which Brian has experienced. And it makes sense because he was always like, well, the thing about Maddie's is like, you don't remember going to Maddie's.
Yes.
And now I'm understanding by the way that they're making their drinks. Because I've only been to like eat.
Yeah, so there's the upstairs, which is the sail off, which we also been to. And the bartender there, Audrey, was telling us all about hauntings and stuff around the town.
Oh, so
and
good.
Apparently the Marblehead Yacht Club the elevators, like there's a ghost that's like opening and closing and traveling in the elevators. And she's like, I've been there late and by myself and it's super spooky. And I'm actually going to do.
Wait, really? I stayed there.
The one on the neck or the one?
The one on the neck. Well, because there's two on the neck. They're next to each other.
And then there's one in Marblehead, like downtown, like Old Town.
Oh, interesting. And that's the one that has the elevator that.
I think that's what the one she was talking about.
Okay. Well, because the one that I was at, I did not take the elevator because it was only 2 stories and my room was at the top of the stairs. So I literally would just walk the stairs up and down. But then I was like, damn it, I missed an opportunity. See a ghost, be trapped in an elevator with a spirit. Dang. So you're acclimating well to Marblehead.
And then yesterday I ran to Salem and Payne met me at a brewery. We were exploring over there too.
It's too bad that so in Salem, they used to have, I think it was called like Far From the Tree. It was a cider brewery.
Oh.
I swear they don't have it anymore. I mean, I could never drink anything from it because I'm allergic to apples, but people loved it and it was right on the water. So I was going to suggest it to you the other day and then I looked it up and I didn't see it. Which one did you go to?
We went to Notch Brewery.
And you liked it?
Yeah, it was great. And then we went to All Souls Lounge.
Oh.
We're just, slowly exploring. We both agree it's really fun to explore, but Marblehead is like wheel ready. It's just like, it is home.
Yeah.
It is just a different energy compared to everywhere else.
I also feel like Marblehead is a great place for people who, like from Santa Monica or like my friend Allison from New York City. It gives you all of the vibes of like small town community, but with the kind of density of people and walkability score that you're used to in some of those other areas. So it's like a good transition.
Yeah. It's a much bigger version of my tiny little courtyard that I was living in with my neighbors always up in my business and like calling me and like having dinner with us. And so it's kind of like
your older neighbors. I loved them. They're so fun. Oh my gosh, wait. Sorry, this is totally a pivot away from Marblehead and everything. But I caught my mom in a lie that I had believed for like 30 years.
What was it?
I was just remembering this because I didn't make the connection that it was like truly a lie. I thought my mom was kind of losing it. When I had been in Houston weeks ago, a couple months ago, my brother was driving and it was night and my mom's looking for something. She turns on the overhead light in the back and I'm like, Mom, turn it off. Turn it off. You're going to blind him. He can't see. And she was like, what?
Lie.
Yeah. And she was like, what? And she was all confused. And I was like, why are you confused? You always told us this. And I'm like, turn it off. Turn it off. And I didn't really think much about it after that. But then I was just watching a video where someone told their kids when they turned on the light, they're like, you can't turn on the light. It's illegal. And then they're like, mwahaha, like our turn to do it. And I was like,
right.
I'm finally making the connection right now that it's actually not illegal, that it's not extremely dangerous, that my mom
it's not
lied.
Distracting. But why did every mother lie about that?
Forgot her lie, though. She lied for like years. She lied for 2 decades. And then when I tell her, don't do that, she can't remember why I think you're not supposed to do that.
Okay, wait, I was just talking about this. Why was that every parent said that to us? What was up with that generation? Why was that?
I fully believed it until like
right.
yesterday. I would have told my kids the same thing, but not because I'm trying to like gaslight them into not turning on the light, but truly because I thought it was illegal. I truly did. I thought it was distracting. I thought it was super dangerous. I thought if a cop sees you for more than like 10 seconds with that backlight on, you were going to get pulled over. 100% fully believed it. And my mom was just like, what are you talking about? I've never said that. What?
It's so crazy to me. I was truly just talking about this. I don't think my mom ever said the illegal part, but she 100% she would freak out. She'd be like, turn that off. It's distracting. I can't see. And then like she would act like she couldn't see where she was driving. And it's just not true.
And every time someone else has done it in the back of my car, like I fully prepare for being blinded. Like I've always semi-panicked, like grip the wheel being like, I'm going to go blind if this stays on much longer. I also am like a little bit ashamed of myself that I didn't make the connection in all of the adult years I've had that it's actually not true. And it took my mom forgetting that she told me panicked, and then me saying a stranger on the internet be like, it's my turn to continue the lies, to be like, oh.
See, that's one of those things like, I don't know if you were told when you made silly faces or if you crossed your eyes, were you told that your face would get stuck like that?
Yeah, mine was really bad. One of my cousins had a little bit of a cross-eyed situation and our parents would tell us that he did that to become cross-eyed. I hope my cousins are not listening to this episode.
But I feel like that one we grew out of and realized like, oh, that wasn't true. Oh, that's really
That was
sad.
a lie. That was
right. But then you just didn't realize the other one was a lie too.
Oh my God. Anywho,
Now you know.
Adulthood is discovering yourself and uncovering your parents' lies.
I feel like they also weirdly believed it for a little while.
I know.
They must have. For every single parent to have like followed that, I don't know.
It's weird that they all communicated. And this was like pre-Facebook days.
Right.
But they all knew it.
There must have been like one commercial.
Yeah, news segment and 11. Well, remember they had commercials for, it was our grandparents' generation that was like at like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. It would be like, do you know where your kids are? Mm-hmm. You would have to come on to remind them that they had children. And then it was like around that generation, like the transition into the boomers that was like, don't forget to hug your children.
Yes.
Here's how you can hug them.
Tell them you love them. Mm-hmm. Emotions are good.
Yeah. All the like freaking lead poisoning they got. Okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit to a different type of horror. And it's not about our parents' lies to us, but it's about something to do with the paranormal. Because
welcome to this podcast.
This is a ghostly podcast. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking back on, I think it was episode 240, I had done the backstory of When a Stranger Calls. So it's like when you get the phone call and the phone's ringing and you answer and they're like, you have 7 days or you're going to die or I'm inside the house. It's like such a classic horror trope. We saw it in The Ring. We saw it in When a Stranger Calls. It's been in Scream even. Like they keep making more Scream movies. And that's again, like you get the phone
play
call.
With that trope. Yeah.
Classic horror tropes. But I was thinking about how phone calls and the nervousness that I think we have too as millennials when we get phone calls from an unknown number. It's kind of like the panic inside you and you don't want to answer. But I was also thinking about all of the times that people have received messages from the other side when they have picked up the phone.
I've had 2 experiences like that.
Wait, what are they? Why can't I remember this?
Well, not me personally, but like in my family specifically, there were 2 experiences. The first was when my grandfather passed away. My grandmother kept getting phone calls at night, the like week after he had passed away. And she like couldn't figure out what phone it was because she would answer the landline and it would be static and like, or the dial tone. She finally puts her cell phone next to her bed and answers and it's like whispery and staticky. And it almost sounded like a voice was coming through, but she couldn't really make out what it was saying. And then she finally realized it was her phone number with the number 7 in front of it calling her. And it was every night at the exact same time. And we believe it was the time my grandfather actually passed away. And then the scary one was when we were looking at that house in Princeton, New Jersey, and my mom's BlackBerry, which was not set up for phone calls, kept getting calls and kept calling my dad's phone. And her BlackBerry was like in the car. It was basically this like whole, get out of this house.
Oh, I have the chills thinking about that.
That one scares me so much because that house
one is really scary.
I don't know what would have happened to me and my family had we moved into that house. I don't think it would be anything good. We would probably be a movie right now.
100%. And it's also so freaky too, because like the first one is kind of like a beautiful story where it's your grandfather trying to reach out using the numbers and the phones that he himself was familiar with. But the other one is like some unknown entity or spirit that's bypassing any glitches you could have within the system, like literally setting your mom's cell phone up to have self-service.
Right.
Gave her a free cellular plan for a moment. And then knew who to contact.
I do think it was a warning, right? It was something trying to protect us, I think, because it feels like it's like leave the house, but I don't know. And then when we did the cursed phone numbers episode, I remember we were getting so many emails after that and people were like, I'm getting calls from numbers like this.
Yeah. Oh, do you remember? This is making me think this isn't even about cursed phone calls, but it's just making me think about that one podcast that someone was like, I listened to this one podcast and it feels so cursed.
I think about it so much. Remember, it broke my phone. I had to I was shutting off my phone and it was still playing.
It was so disturbing. I don't remember the name of it, nor would I ever actually give it out to anybody because it truly does it just feels wrong. I don't know if there is anything wrong with it, but it feels wrong enough that like we
avoid it.
Oh God, that was so freaky. Oh, okay. Clearly some scary stuff can happen over the phone, but for this episode, I did try to focus on some real life scenarios where the living receive phone calls from beyond the grave, and they're usually from the people that they love.
I love this.
I feel like I've been kind of doing some lighthearted episodes recently.
I
in
think
preparation
we're
for the
gearing
fall.
up. Yeah. Because I even have picked a couple of lighthearted ones. We're mentally prepping for the fear.
Right, 100%. Okay, we will begin with the story of Charles E. Peck. And for Charles's story, I do want to give credit to Verity Partington because Verity authored an article on Medium, which is where I got the majority of the information regarding Charles E. Peck and this sort of mystery surrounding these phone calls.
Okay.
So 49-year-old Charles Peck, he lived in Salt Lake City and he had recently gotten a divorce. And a few years had passed and he met another person, and the two of them, Andrea Katz was her name, Charles and Andrea, they fall in love and they're head over heels for each other, and it's all good vibes. They want to start their lives together and they get engaged. But Andrea does not live in Salt Lake City. Andrea lives in Los Angeles. So they do have plans to move in together, but in order for that to happen, Charles has to find a new job because he had been living in Salt Lake City. And he'd also been working a job that required him to be in person. He worked for Delta.
Okay.
So it was 2008. So this is like around the time that we're entering the recession, and finding a job isn't always the easiest. So he was a little apprehensive, I think, about like, will he get transferred? Could he find another job in LA? And so he begins his search, and he actually does get an opportunity to interview for a job for the customer service agent position, which is a position he himself had held with Delta for 19 years at the Delta at the Van Nuys airport. So it makes sense. It's like a job he's already had for a company he's already worked for, but it's a different airport. He still has to interview. It's not just like a transfer situation where they're like, here you go. So it's still a big win for Charles, right? Because we can assume he's probably going to get the job.
He's a good candidate.
Yeah, he's the perfect candidate. There's no onboarding really needed. So the interview required Charles to travel to Los Angeles to be in person. And so he bought a Friday morning flight to Los Angeles and then a ticket on the Metrolink train, which he would ride to Moore Park. And then his fiancée, Andrea, would pick him up around 4:45 p.m. And then he could be in LA or like around the area that he needed to be for this interview.
I'm nervous.
I know there's a lot of transportation involved right now.
I'm nervous because I feel like obviously a death has to be involved in order for this to be a paranormal podcast. Yeah. And I just don't know.
We have planes, trains, and automobiles.
Who's going to die or if someone's going to protect I don't know. Anyway, keep going. Okay. I'm nervous.
So Charles gets on the plane and he arrives in Los Angeles. Okay. So everybody's safe, right?
Okay.
He then has to board his next leg of the trip, which is boarding the train alongside 224 other people. It's a long day of travel, but, easy enough. So Charles is just sitting on board the train. It's navigating the tracks, and he's likely, I don't know what he was thinking, but I imagine he's reflecting on these big changes, the things that are happening in his life. He and Andrea had been engaged for 7 months at this point, and so they were basically waiting to move in together to start the wedding planning. And so I'm sure he was thinking about that. Like there's a lot of big changes. He's moving to a different state. He's going to start wedding planning. He's going to have a new group of coworkers soon, most likely. He's going to have a wedding to plan. Like there's just a lot of things going on.
They're all exciting, but it is also scary. It's like a lot of change.
Totally. And the train is the perfect place, I feel like, to have these reflections because nothing is required of you on the train. You can just sit there and like stare out the window.
I picture the OC, that like one moment in the OC opening where he's looking out the window, really contemplative.
Yeah, 100%. Which I think I did that exact thing when I took the train from LA to San Diego because it goes along the water like that exact same track.
And so I was pretty.
Like, looking at, I should have played the Laguna Beach soundtrack, OC. Really gotten the vibes. But he can just comfortably sit there, reflect, or work. Like maybe he was going through some of the interview questions. I'm not sure what Charles was doing, but it doesn't matter what Charles is doing. What matters is what the people are doing who are in charge of keeping the train on track and safe.
Oh, no.
Right? So while Charles had many reasons to be distracted, one person who should not have been distracted was engineer Robert Sanchez. And unfortunately, Robert Sanchez, he was on his phone. He was texting one of his friends, and he completely missed the stop signal for a merging double track. So he just did not see that he basically was running a red light and going onto this double track. A freight train that had been moving at 83 miles per hour, coming the other way on the double track to merge, collided with the metro. The high-speed
no.
collision would be one of the worst rail crashes in U.S. history, killing 26 people, which actually, obviously, any life lost is horrible. But given that there were over 220 people on board, for there to be only 26 deaths does feel kind of miraculous in and of itself.
Yeah, I am curious, though, how many people have like life-altering injuries and,
Probably so many. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a ton.
And then the trauma.
Yeah, any event like this is horrific.
Yeah. Jeez.
But for two really fast-moving trains to collide like this, it still was a catastrophic event, and it did result in 26 deaths.
Oh, no, Charles.
So very quickly, first responders, they get on the scene, and what they saw was it was absolutely horrific. There were mangled body parts. Some of the train cars were like basically crunched where they couldn't easily access them. It was like nearly impossible to reach some of the survivors. So people were trapped in this train or in the different train cars, and those who were able to, they did jump up and try to help those who were severely injured. One of these people was priest Donald Ashman. And Donald himself, he was injured, but he wasn't horribly injured. And he saw the news helicopters circling above, and his thought was, oh my God, what if they zoom in and they're reporting this live on the news, and someone who doesn't know that their loved one is affected in this crash is going to see their like dead body or their face zoomed in from the news helicopter. So he gets up and he's like, I have to do something. So he wanders around the halls of the train car or train cars. I'm not sure what he had access to. And he goes around and he starts covering the faces of the people he found who were deceased, or at least trying to like obstruct people who were very severely injured.
Well, this is what happened with the Kobe thing with the helicopter accident. Everyone it's like airing that footage, and it's just devastating.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also that police officer that was like literally taking pictures and showing people. It's just terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he just really didn't want someone to turn on the TV and see, their sister, their brother, their spouse, their child dead on the TV and find out that way. So he did what he could to try to give privacy to the people that were injured or who had already passed. And for those who he found that were very close to death, he delivered last rites. So he did anything he could to help the people around him. I know. What a guy. And the crash was really catastrophic. It was very overwhelming. So the fact that he had just like the right of mind to be able to go around and do this is also
and like
very
snap
impressive.
Into action like that. Yeah.
Totally.
Jeez.
As for those who were on the outside of the train looking at the crash, there was a lot of anxiety and fear and terror. It was palpable in the air because what they were seeing was it looked really bad, and it was really bad. So the rescuers, they continued to struggle to make their way through the debris and to find the over 200 people that were on board. Loved ones would watch on. They were holding their breath. They were praying for a miracle. People were frantically driving to the scene once they found out that they knew someone on board. So it was just this horrific thing where so many people were just standing by being like, I need some news. And they're very slowly were things happening. So it was a very high anxiety event.
Mm-hmm.
Andrea Katz, Charles's fiance, she had been on the way to the final train stop, which is where she was going to pick up Charles. And while she was driving there, she was listening to the radio, and a broadcast came through and interrupted the radio station she was listening to with the news of the crash. Andrea pulled over. Her heart is racing. She grabs her cell phone. There on the screen, she had several missed calls, all from Charles. So she's like, holy shit, he tried to tell me he was in the crash. She calls him back, goes to voicemail, calls him back, goes to voicemail. It's like his phone is dead, or there's just like no service. I don't know. There's so many people at the scene.
There's so many things happening. Yeah.
Right. Jammed cell phone towers. Like it could be possible, but no calls are going through. So then she calls Charles's relatives to notify them of the crash and that Charles was on board.
Oh my gosh.
And so Andrea and then many of Charles's relatives, they're all now heading to the scene of the crash. They're all driving there to wait to see if Charles gets off the train.
Jeez.
And it does seem promising that Charles is alive because in the hours that he was trapped inside of the train, he managed to make over 35 phone calls to relatives and friends. But what was heard on the other end was not Charles's voice, it was just static. So people, they were all gathered around and no one could make the phone call back. It was like only a one-way sort of situation
I'm just...
Yeah. And so everyone was starting to panic and they were like, is the service just bad enough that he can make phone calls to us and it's just staticky and we can't hear him? Is he too injured to speak? And so what they were doing, basically, this is like so heartbreaking, but it's also so lovely. Every time that they got a phone call and they answered it, they would just try to speak to him and say, like, you're doing so great, Charles. Someone's coming for you. Just hang on. And like giving him updates and giving him hopeful and like inspirational messages and just trying to like talk just in case he could hear their voices. But time kept ticking on, and Charles was not walking off the train, and the rescuers were still struggling to get through all of the debris. So everyone was like, okay, well, he's alive. With every phone call, we know he's alive. And it wasn't like they came in like one after the other. It was throughout many hours. And so there was a lot of hope still, but it was just waiting until the rescuers could reach him. So the rescuers continued to work. The sun had now set, and only the lights of the emergency vehicles and the lights of the EMTs, firefighters, police, searchers lit up the tracks. A few more passengers had yet to be found. Charles was in that group of people who still had not been retrieved.
Jeez.
But Charles kept calling, and the police used the signal from his call to try to locate him where he was in the train. And they did struggle to do that. Right. And by 3 a.m. the next morning, no more calls were coming in, so they could no longer use the signal. But they had like generally an area where they thought maybe he could be.
Because isn't it not an exact science? It's like they ping off of multiple towers, so it's like a general,
Yes. Around 4 a.m., Charles was finally found, but he was dead. And so this is when I'm sure people started to think, oh my God, if we had only gotten to him sooner, if only the connection was clear and we could hear his voice. But there was some confusion with the people who found him, the medics and the first responders, because they were like, okay, well, this is the man that has been calling us or calling his loved ones, and we've been tracing the signal, and he's been seemingly actively alive for the past 11 hours.
Right. Because it's not like it accidentally was being pressed, like calling one person. It's calling multiple relatives and loved ones.
Yes, exactly. If it were a cell phone malfunction, it would just be like you call the last person in your contacts over and over and over. But it was specific. And it also wasn't a malfunction where it just called anyone in the address book. You know, like his boss wasn't being called. Right. His kid's babysitter or like whatever, his dog walker. Like those people weren't being called. It was just specifically like best friends, relatives, family, fiance. It was very specific who was called. But the medics are very confused because the state of Charles's body, the location of his body, and the amount of force received to that area in the collision, there was absolutely no way he could have survived the initial impact. And also the evidence of body and
decay.
It's hard to, essentially, like there was evidence he had passed for. He had
when
been
the accident
gone
happened.
For a long time. Yeah. It didn't just happen in the past hour. He'd been gone pretty much immediately. So everyone's confused because 11 hours had passed and yet Charles had been calling them. So how is that possible?
And his cell phone was with him? Like, did they find his phone with him?
Nope. Cell phone was never retrieved.
What?
Isn't that spooky? I don't know if that's like an added bit of lore or if that's factual, but it did say that his cell phone was never recovered from the crash.
Okay, because part of me was like, well, what if like someone else in the accident kept trying to call people who were relatives in his phone? But I guess how would that person know specific people to call? And then, I don't know. The fact that it was never found. Interesting.
Right. And also they were tracing the signal of the cell phone. So if it were someone else.
Right.
I don't know. It would seem like they would be able to find that person.
That's so weird.
So skeptics and believers have been pitching some theories to explain this phenomenon. Some people thought perhaps it was a prank, someone trying to make some fake phone calls, somehow like hacking into his phone prank. Which is horrible. But then also Andrea was like, well, the only person that knew he was even on this train was me. And then I called his relative, like the specific relatives who came here. Right. And that was after we already received a bunch of phone calls from him. So that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And some people thought, well, maybe it's a cell phone glitch or a malfunction of the cell provider. But like we were saying before, that doesn't make sense because it wasn't just one person getting the call or just like random people from his phone book. It was everybody.
It was very
that
specific.
He cared for. It was like 8 people, getting these calls.
Right.
So he called Andrea and he called some of his closest friends. He also called his son, his sister, his brother, and his stepmom. That's very specific.
Oh my gosh. It's so heartbreaking knowing what happened to him, but I would feel a little bit of reassurance being like, he was trying to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Or, there is this like final contact with everyone.
Right. I know. That is really nice. It's also upsetting how much he was trying to call, but maybe that's also his way of making the situation less scary for them, because they had to wait 11 hours for him to be found. And to sit there for 11 hours with absolutely no news.
He was trying to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, at least he was helping them get to that point.
Oh.
So people are confused because the phone apparently wasn't recovered. People don't know how he could have made these phone calls, because it did appear by all bit of medical evidence that Charles had passed upon impact of the train collision. But these phantom phone calls from beyond the grave, they do seem to have a few patterns, and some of these patterns match what happened with Charles. So a lot of these phone calls from beyond the grave, typically they happen soon after someone passes or around the anniversary of their death. So there's something symbolic about the timing. Like what you were saying with your grandfather, it was the thought that he was making those phone calls at the time
that he had
of
passed
day
away.
when he had passed away. Yes.
Yeah.
Typically, it's usually quite difficult to hear anything, or it's static on the other end. Also, what you had said with your grandfather. But occasionally, spirits are able to muster up enough energy to be heard, to actually speak and give a message to their loved ones. So I'm going to tell you a couple of those cases.
Oh. Okay.
Dean Koontz, he was a man who was in his office one afternoon, and he received a phone call from an unlisted number. If I received a phone call from an unlisted number, I would probably just chuck my phone and run. I'm not answering, right?
The only time I'll answer a number like that is if I'm expecting or waiting for a call.
Well, Dean was not.
Yeah.
But he's braver than us, or braver than me, I should say. And he did answer the unlisted number phone call. And upon answering, he hears a woman's voice on the other end. And it's so quiet. It's so distant. It's so far away. And she says, "Please be careful." And Dean goes, "Who are you?" But she doesn't answer the question. She just simply repeats her warning 3 more times. "Be careful, be careful, be careful."
Holy
So Dean
shit.
hangs up. And once he hangs up, he's thinking about it and he's reflecting on what just happened. And he's like, that voice sounded so much like my mother. And his mom had already passed away a while before. So it's a voice he hadn't heard in a long time and didn't necessarily make that connection right away, because he obviously wasn't expecting to hear his mom's voice. But when he was thinking about it, he was like, that did sound like her voice, just like really, really distant.
Yeah.
So the voice stuck with him, this ominous warning from this unlisted number. He's like, I don't really know what this could be. But a few days later, Dean decides to go visit his father. His father is alive, but his dad is staying in a mental facility. And when Dean walked in to go visit his dad and greet his father in the room, as soon as he gets far enough into the room, Dean's dad unveiled a knife and he lunged at Dean. And Dean is now fighting off his father. His father is trying to stab him. And a bystander in the facility sees what's happening, calls the police. The police do arrive rather quickly. But by the time the police get there, Dean had overpowered his father. I'm assuming his father's a little bit, older.
Sure.
And so Dean did take control of the situation, grabbed the knife from his dad, had it away from him. His dad didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
So there was a lot of confusion. And so Dean is, still trying to keep his father away from him, keep the knife away from his father. And the police arrive on scene. But all the police can see is that there's a younger man with a knife kind of overpowering an older man.
Oh,
so they don't know who the perpetrator is. And Dean looks awfully suspicious in this situation. So Dean responds to the police, who are now screaming at him, "Drop the knife, drop the knife." Dean is like, whoa, I'm not the one causing the fight. And he's trying to explain, like, it was my dad. He's like trying to do this explanation while still holding the knife so his dad doesn't get to it.
Right.
But there's not enough time to explain it. The situation is escalating. The police don't know what happened. And all they can see is this man holding a knife, wielding a knife, this older person in distress, this guy with the knife becoming more anxious and riled up and yelling. And they yell, "Drop the knife!" again. And in this moment, Dean realizes, holy shit, they think I did it. Their hands are now on their weapons. They're identifying me as an armed threat. And this very well could end with me being killed. And in the back of his mind, he just hears, "Be careful." So his mom's warning again. from a few days before. So he drops the knife, and this move saves him. The police gather the knife. They understand what's now happening, and Dean and his father are both safe. The warning was not about being careful about his dad trying to stab him. It was about being careful about how you handled the situation when the police arrived. Please be careful.
But this is what's so scary. Like, I appreciate the call and the warning, but if I got that, I wouldn't know what to be careful of. And how long am I supposed to be cautious of that? Should I not leave my door? Should I stay inside? You know, it's like.
I know. It's hard because on the other side, maybe you only have a couple words you can say.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you convey everything you need to in just a few words in a short amount of time?
Right.
Another example of paranormal communication using technology was experienced by the friends of Jack Froese. In June of 2011, Jack, he passed away unexpectedly after having sudden heart arrhythmia, and he was just 32 years old.
Oh, wow.
So people gathered to pay their respects to Jack, and friends and family, they mourned. And 5 months after Jack's death, so this was not right after his death. I mean, it was still, I feel like within the 6 months or a year, it still counts as like right after someone's death. But it was 5 months after, something odd begins to happen. Emails are sending from Jack's email. His friend Tim Hart was the first to receive an email, and the subject line said, "I'm watching." And Tim is staring at the email in his inbox, and he's like, is this a cruel prank? Did someone hack into Jack's email? He's super confused. So he clicks on the email and he reads, to his surprise, there's more to the email. There's actually like text in the body of the email. And it says, "Did you hear me? I'm at your house. Clean your effing attic." And Tim is so struck by this message because not only is it written in the way that Jack would speak, but right before Jack passed, the last time that Tim and Jack had spent time together, Jack had gone over to Tim's house and they both went up to Tim's attic, and Tim was saying how he wanted to do something with the attic. So they were standing there spending like a significant amount of time in Tim's attic discussing potential plans for like what could be done with the attic.
Oh, so he's encouraging him. Do it.
Yeah.
He's like, stop talking about it. Do it.
I'm watching.
Wow.
So Tim is so struck by this message because it just, who would know about that? It totally seems like Jack. And then not long after, Jack's cousin, Jimmy McGraw, also receives an email. It's in the same month that Tim had received an email.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time Jimmy received the email, he had just recently, within the past like couple weeks, broken his ankle. So he was kind of like semi on bed rest, nursing this broken ankle. And he receives this email from his deceased cousin, Jack. And he clicks on the email and it says, "I knew you were going to break your ankle. Tried to warn you. Gotta be careful." So Jimmy's more suspicious than Tim. I'm sure Tim was like, what the hell's going on? Who could have sent this? But Jimmy's a little bit more suspicious, and he starts asking around, and nobody seems to, either they're not fessing up to it or they're just fully believable that no one has the email password. No one has access to the account. And so then Tim goes, because I think he and Jimmy started to kind of like talk to each other about how they both received these messages. So Tim's now getting suspicious too. More so than he was. So Tim asks Jack's mom if she had sent the message. Like, maybe this is just a odd way of her coping. She has access to it.
I would fully believe someone has his email and is sending emails.
Right. And she denied it. She was like, "I didn't send it." And I think when they pressed her a little bit more, she said, and maybe you could take this either way as like kind of a suspicious thing to say, but then also perhaps she's just like, take it for what it is. It's communication from Jack. But she said, quote, "Think what you want about it or accept it as a gift." And so Jack's friends and family have decided to accept these emails as a gift, despite any bit of suspicions that this was communication from Jack from the other side.
And even if it was his mom, like how would she know about the attic with Tim?
Yeah, that's so specific. Like unless Jack had called his mom and was like, "Oh, I went over to Tim's house and then we spent a lot of time in the attic talking about it."
Yeah, I don't know.
It is kind of specific. Like I feel like most people just, if the mom was like, "What did you do?" Like, "Oh, I went over to Tim's and we hung out for a bit."
It feels like the one with Jimmy where it says, "I tried to warn you." I wonder if he could try to look back at when he broke his ankle, if there was any type of sign.
Yeah, anything odd, any weird things sort of happening leading up to it. Yeah, because he did say tried to warn you. Got to be more careful.
Gotta be more careful.
Okay, so lastly, I want to end on one of my favorite stories. And this is a story that I found shared by someone with the username Rizazi1 on Reddit. So the other stories I shared are ones that you can find like articles and actual publications and journalists have looked into. But this one was just on Reddit and I thought it was so funny.
I can't wait.
So Rizazi1. Rizazi's granny had passed away. And when Granny passed away, their dad went over to Granny's house a couple weeks after to just check on things, you know, like start, I guess, the process of taking care of the house, make sure everything's okay, probably clear out the fridge.
Right.
And on the door was a "We missed you" note from a delivery company, indicating that there had been a package that needed to be signed for and that they'd attempted to deliver it and it had failed. So their dad, Granny's son, calls the company to tell them that he's calling on behalf of his mother and here's her address. And he saw that there was a note that there was a missed delivery and he actually needs to cancel the order. And the man on the other line is like, "Oh, no problem at all. She actually called us 2 days ago to cancel her order." And the dad is like, "No, that is impossible because my mother passed 2 weeks ago," and starts to explain that. But the man is like insistent on the phone that he had this conversation. Like he's the one that actually answered the phone from this woman who had called. And he said that when he answered the phone, she identified herself. She was apologizing, saying she needed to cancel the order because she was, quote, unexpectedly going away. So she...
Oh my gosh.
From the other side, I just appreciate this so much. That from the other side, having the ability to make a phone call, she calls a company's customer service to say, "I need to cancel the order that's coming because I'm somewhere else now."
Well, okay, one, that's extremely helpful, but then two, the phrasing of unexpectedly going away is absolutely incredible.
And it actually is super helpful because it's like when you have a loved one that passes, you have no idea what was going on in their lives. Like you don't know what they've ordered. You don't know what plans they've made. You don't know who's expecting them. You are trying to get access just to like the basics, like a mortgage or like credit card payments. You know, there's so many tasks to do. So the fact that she took it upon herself to try to complete one of those tasks for them, I think is just so special. Yeah, she just wanted to make the lives of her grieving family a little bit easier and return the goods to the business. Yeah. What a woman. Oh. So just to wrap up this episode, I do want to say that I think in talking about this, we've touched on this multiple times throughout our podcast too, where we'll receive emails that we'll read where people talk about loved ones making contact with them. And then we receive the same, if not way more emails of people wishing that they had contact from their loved ones. And I think that it's a really tough topic because it's one of those things where like we all grieve the people that we lose and we all want so badly to hear from them. And I don't want this episode to be like, I want it to feel uplifting and I want it to feel a little bit fun. I don't want it to feel like one of those things where you're like, well, why didn't I get a call? Or should I start answering my random spam phone calls? Right. What if it's a chance to communicate? What would have happened if I had answered? Like there's a lot of what ifs, but I think what we can really just take away from this is that communication comes in many different forms. Yeah. Signs come from many different forms. And what will be, as cheesy as that is and as unhelpful as that can be to say. But I just think simply these signs and messages from our loved ones, whether it's something as little as a penny on the floor or in 10 years' time, the smell of your father wafting into a room after you've been wanting to make contact for so long. Like these are here to remind us that you are so loved by that person and you're not forgotten by that person, that they are always here, whether you know it or not, and they're looking over you. And they just want you to know that everything will be all right, despite how much you may get to communicate with them or not. Right.
Yeah. And the truth is we don't understand how contact and communication works. We don't understand what the access is and it's difficult, but we absolutely believe they're still with us in some way.
Totally. And I also like the idea, the possibility that when we do pass, we may just have the opportunity to make one last call.
I do like that idea too.
So those are some phone calls from beyond the grave.
Well, I found a couple from our listeners, and these kind of have a variety of types of hauntings. This one is a little bit spookier.
Okay.
This is from our listener, Sierra, and it's called, Have You Ever Had a Ghost Phone Call? 10 out of 10 don't recommend. So I'm going to dive into it. My mom has always been super sensitive to the paranormal. She has been able to see spirits and feel when someone is present. She can also tell if it feels dark or not. Growing up, I've had plenty of things happen, but again, with having a very spiritual mom, nothing really scared me because I knew she would be able to properly protect us. Anywho, when I was a freshman in high school, my mom had a side business cleaning stores, doctor's office, phone stores, etc. And I want to just mention my mom in the mornings is a very loud woman. I love her to death, but girl. Therefore, all of the lights would be on, the news would be going in the background, and my mom would sing in the morning. So there's just a lot of noise. Well, one morning, I was getting ready for school, and I get a phone call from my mom asking if I would come to the basement and help her bring up the laundry. I said, sure, and I made my way downstairs. We lived in the Midwest, so we had 3 floors. The basement, the middle level with the kitchen, half bath, dining, and living room, and then top floor with bedrooms. So when I went down to the middle level, I realized it wasn't as loud as it typically was, and the lights were on, but the TV was off. So then I go down into the basement to help her. But as I get there, I noticed that the laundry side of the basement and family room side, all of the lights were off. Being an annoying and confused teenager, I stomp up the stairs, annoyed. And then I remembered my mom has just started taking a new account in the mornings before taking me to school and heading to her work. So I was like, that's weird. And when I get to the top of the stairs from the basement, if you walk a few steps, you'll reach the garage, which is where my mom is always parked in. So now, confused and a little bit scared and wondering what the fuck is going on, I decide to call her. Her phone answers immediately. I say, hello? No answer. So I say it a few more times, getting even more annoyed. And then I go to hang up and I hear her pick up the phone saying, hello? And she sounds very confused. I told her what had happened, and with my mom being the spiritual woman she is, instantly freaked out and said, Sierra, I never called you from my phone. It has been in my back pocket this entire time. I'm not at home. I'm at my cleaning account, and I've been here cleaning. I never even answered when you called because I was confused. I kept hearing someone say hello, but I'm alone here. After that,
weird.
She told me to go into bed with my little sister and that she would be on her way home right away. My mom never called me. She never answered the phone, and she never asked me for help in the basement. I feel like when I speak to anyone about this, I get a look like I'm lying or I'm crazy, but it was in 2012 or 13. And writing it in all these years later is making me really scared. Anyway, love the pod. Hopefully you find this, and I will write in more one day.
That is weird that it's like communication both ways.
Mm-hmm.
It does freak me out a bit. It's like, what could this be? And I also am like semi-suspicious of like what triggered this event. Is it something at the new house? At the new cleaning account?
I don't know.
The new clients? It is weird, but it's making me remember that like you and I both have experiences with text messages, not necessarily phone calls, but we've both had text messages that we never sent that the other person receives, but we can't see on our end, or vice versa, where it's like weird glitching and it's like, how is this being sent and how are these messages coming through? And this is confusing. And it's like clearly between 2 people, like us and someone else, but like it's not either of us.
Text messages, I feel like I can understand a little bit more because there could be like a weird glitch or service thing. But phone calls, especially when you hear a voice on the other end, like Sierra being called down to the basement is very ominous.
That's weird. That's freaky. Don't go to the basement.
Don't go. Okay, I have 2 more. I'll end with the one that's a lot more lighthearted. But okay, this is from our listener, Tara, and it's just called Ghost Call. Hi, girls. First, I wanted to say I love your podcast, and I first heard of you from the Newkirk shout out to you on the Haunted Objects podcast.
Ooh, Greg and Dana, shout out.
I have always had strange encounters in my life that I used to ignore, but now I embrace as just another one of my senses. A force that has always warned me of danger or led me with feelings. This particular time was not a feeling, but a full-on interaction with someone reaching out to me. I had a very strange encounter when my now 10-year-old son was a toddler. This happened one weekend when my son was a little over a year old and barely walking. It happened one weekend when we had a friend staying over whose car was in the shop. So my husband had offered to drive him to work. So our friend stayed the night and they got up early the next morning. I slept in that Saturday because I had a long and busy week at work, and I awoke to my cell phone ringing on the nightstand. When I grabbed it to see who was calling, the number registered was a long series of unrecognizable numbers, way more numbers than any phone number. We lived on a busy state route in the country, and cell phone coverage was kind of spotty, so I tried to answer, and I heard no one on the other end. Usually if you went outside, you had a better signal, so I hopped up and headed for the back door, all while saying hello, hello. As I went past my son's crib, which was in the corner of my bedroom, I noticed it was empty. Thinking maybe he was with my husband at the time, I continued with the spotty call, and as I was trying to answer, I stepped out the back door for the signal, but the call dropped. As I stepped outside, I was face to face with my toddler, out of his crib, standing in the yard, alone. He was not with my husband, and my husband was still driving our friend to work. Somehow, my toddler had escaped his crib out the back door, and the handle was out of his reach, and he was hardly just walking.
What?
He was standing near the crazy country road that people take at insane speeds. I calmly scooped him up, ran back inside with him, sat him back in his crib, shaking at what could have happened had I not been woken up by that call.
My God, like the beginning of Pet Sematary.
Remembering the strange number, I looked back to my phone, and it had shut itself off. I turned it back on, searched for the number had called, but there were no phone calls showing in my recent call log. I truly
I have
believe
chills.
a ghost called me to warn me that I needed to wake up and save my son from danger that day.
Spirit intervention.
Mm-hmm.
That is beautiful. Oh my gosh. That's so scary.
Terrifying.
And also the confusion of like how he got out and the fear of him getting out again, especially because he like can't even reach the handle. It's like, how did that happen? But
no
like,
idea.
Thank God, someone out there in the universe was like,
Truly.
oh my God, we have to do something.
Incredible.
They saved that baby's life.
Okay, now the last one is from our listener, Jessica. And Jessica has a bunch of stories, so we'll read the other stories in encounters. But this is from Jessica. This is one of my favorite stories. It's from my dad. A year or two after I was born, my great-grandmother passed away. Her name was Neller. 1 year to the day of her passing, my dad was at my great-grandfather's house, who we called Pop. The phone on the wall started to ring. And back then, early 2000s, they had something that showed caller ID on the TV. So the number on the TV was the number of the phone that was ringing. My pop answered, and there was nothing. It rang again. Same number. Again, nothing on the other end. The third time my pop answered, he said into the phone, "Neller, it's okay. We're okay." And the phone didn't ring after that. I think it was my great-grandmother just worried about them, and maybe she hung around because she didn't want to leave. I would have loved to have known her. She seemed so sweet. And that's from Jessica.
That is really sweet. Just waiting for we're okay, we're fine.
Yeah.
But it's like the anxiety of not knowing, and you're like, I need to make contact. I need to make sure that they're okay.
I am curious what the phone number said on the TV, because it was the same number every time.
It's so hard these days, too, with people being able to create like Google phone numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The phone calls from beyond the grave, like when they come from a number that doesn't actually come from like someone's cell phone themselves, which is another thing that happens a lot where people will get calls from, remember at one of our shows, was it in New Orleans?
In New Orleans, yeah. Call mom.
Yeah.
In the middle of the show, her phone started, like Siri was like, calling mom. And her mom had passed away a long time ago. She had not said that. Her phone was just sitting or either in her back pocket or off. And there was a lot of light anomalies that were happening around her too. The lights
behind her kept flickering, and the people sitting behind her was like, is something going on? Like, are you seeing this? What is happening here?
Yeah, and she believed her mom was trying to make contact with her. It's so sweet.
Ugh. You know what I loved about Tor is I feel like that happened a lot, where it was just like
so many
the
times.
Right number of open and energetic people all coming into a room together. It really did create some sort of space where certain people who hadn't communicated with loved ones for a while suddenly had that opportunity. The channels were open.
I love it so much.
And a lot of people had experiences.
Okay, this is not paranormal at all, but we flew American out here, and I've never had this happen. Have you ever left something on a plane before? And like,
yes,
you're just
I left my laptop.
Did you ever get it back?
Yeah. Well, I didn't leave the airport. I ran back.
Okay.
My laptop.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've left things on planes before, and I feel like it's just, unless you do something like that, it's kind of a goner. Or if it's your ID, because then it will, like, someone will find it. But Payne left his AirPods on the plane, and yesterday we're sitting on the couch and I get a call from a Boston, Massachusetts number. So I was like, okay, maybe I should just answer because I'm out here. Like, it doesn't seem like it's spam. American Airlines called and they were like, did you or Payne leave your AirPods on the plane? And Payne hadn't realized. And literally American Airlines called based on like finding it in the seat. There was no way for them to know it was actually ours. And they have
I guess if you were the last flight, they could look at who was assigned that seat.
Usually I feel like they just put it in lost and found. And if someone doesn't contact them, it's a wash. But they reached out to us specifically. American. I know. Snaps are American.
Yeah, never heard that happening before.
Yeah. We also got ice cream sundaes on the plane, which really...
What? Did you fly first class or something?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, I'm not getting that when I fly American. What the fuck? I was like, I've never received an ice cream sundae. That's because I'm in the back by the toilets.
We were a little bougie. Yeah.
Damn, ice cream sundaes. That's tempting.
You want one right now?
Yeah, I do. I'm craving it now.
What's your topping, or what are your toppings?
Hot fudge and caramel sauce.
Oh, I'm a big caramel.
And then, I either do like almonds or pecans. Sometimes some chocolate chips. If I'm getting soft serve, like creamy, I have to have some sprinkles.
Yes, I agree. Some like the rainbow sprinkles. I'm a rainbow sprinkle gal. And then I love like a strawberry sauce.
Oh, I was just going to say I've been doing some cut strawberries, but then I always panic after because I'm like, am I going to get listeria from these like cut? Because it typically like cut fruit is how you end up getting like food poisoning or listeria. So I freak out, but I still get it. But I should pivot to just strawberry sauce.
Corinne, my hypochondriac friend. You sweet soul.
My strawberries are going to kill me. If anything's going to kill me, it's going to be ice cream. The strawberries.
If anything is going to kill you, it's the fact that you're allergic to cherries. And that's a topping on a lot of sundaes. And I'm worried that they would accidentally put it on your sundae.
I know. Luckily, the maraschino cherries are so goddamn processed that my body doesn't recognize them as cherries anymore. So I'm fine with those.
That's also scary, but I'm happy.
That is also scary. Yeah, that's the crazy thing about food allergies is you realize sometimes how processed certain things are when your body's like, I think this one's fine. You're like, okay, because it's not even a cherry anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
Well, if you've had contact from the other side in any way, whether it's a phone call or just something paranormal that's happened to you, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your strangers, we
all have them. We've got a lot of strangers around us.
Please email them to us at twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like episodes 1 week early and ad-free, plus one bonus episode every single month, plus live campfire stories every Tuesday night, plus so many other benefits like book club and stickers and holiday cards, join us on Patreon. It's $5 a month and you get all of that.
I just spaced out, but now I'm back. Thank you guys so much. We love you. Shout out to Jamie Ryan, who edits our audio and video. I have no idea where we were in this ramble, but shout out, Jamie.
This is pretty good.
And we will see you on the other side.